Afternoon, everyone, and thanks very much for the kind words, Don. And I'd just like to start by acknowledging fellow Nkulira board members, Don and David Galvin in the room, and for the great work and the contribution that they're making to the work that we're doing in relation to the disaster response. So that's what I've been asked here today to have a chat to you all about, is the Commonwealth's response to the monsoonal floods earlier in the year, and possibly more importantly the work we've done, but more importantly the work that we've got ahead of us. So thanks very much. Let's get into it. So from the 25th of January to the 14th of February earlier this year, the heavens well and truly opened, and it resulted in 12 days of continuous rain. It rained and it rained and it rained. The rain was heavy, the rain was light, the rain was low. Coupled with the rain were cold and strong winds at varying degrees, and temperatures like we hadn't experienced for some time for long periods, particularly coupled with rain. The impact of the monsoonal event covered some 100 million hectares, or 56% of the state. It impacted 39 local government areas, although there is some contention in relation to the exact footprint of the monsoon, given the cloud coverage for such an extended period of time, and the satellite was having some challenges in recording the exact footprint of the monsoon. But we are working with 39 areas, local government areas. The cruel irony of the event was prior to the flood, McKinley, Richmond, Flinders and Winton Shires were all well and truly drought declared, and since the rain, all of those shires, if not fully, are partially back in that drought declaration situation. So the irony is not lost on us. So the disaster played out for a lot of us in our lounge rooms over many days, and I think that some of the images that we saw before us will stay with us for a very long time. Government and peak industry bodies are still coming to grips with the numbers, and there's still work being done as we speak in trying to really capture what the actual losses have been. So the full picture may never be truly determined, but one thing we do know is that hundreds of thousands of cattle, sheep and goats were lost as a result of floodwaters, exhaustion and exposure to cold. Stock losses were reported as high as 100% on some properties. In particular, breeders and export ready, so number 8 animals, they certainly were not missed. Silting, waterlogging, erosion and decimated pastures on a massive scale. In addition to that, the impact on infrastructure is also phenomenal. The Queensland Government estimates around about 6,500 kilometres of damage to state roads, over 40,000 kilometres of local government roads, 15,000 on farm, it's incredible numbers, and around about 10,000 kilometres of fencing were impacted. In amongst that, of course, was the damage around about 300 kilometres of train line, which forced the closure of the line between Richmond and Julia Creek, so significant disruption to the mining and minerals production in that area. The financial cost of the devastation is enormous, and the challenges ahead are beginning to be understood. Deloitte Access Economics have done some work in this space, and they've reported that the losses are going to exceed $5.5 billion. That's the social and economic losses. Of that $5.5 billion, more than 430 million of those losses will be the impact on agriculture, some 7%. The true extent, though, is yet to play out, with extensive livestock losses and long-term impacts on pastures. A significant blow to the regional economy, and it leaves a substantial hole in the supply of cattle to important regional markets, including the live export trade. Furthermore, the true impact of the flood on the market is hidden by the insidious drought that's upon us at the moment, gripping Queensland, the Northern Territory and also New South Wales. A lack of follow-up rain, in some cases a return to drought conditions, has severely compounded the feed situation, and half of the affected producers are still waiting to see how the season plays out before restocking. So the flow-on effects are felt beyond Queensland borders and extend right across Northern Australia, including the live export sector. As everyone in this room knows, the live export trade is a critical market for most northern producers. Despite the geographical scale of the trade, there are close interplays between the regions, and major disruptions in one area certainly has a knock-on effect in others, and northwest Queensland is no exception. For instance, we're now seeing extremely high and unsustainable turn-off rates in the Territory, and that's adding an additional layer of complexity to the whole northern cattle market situation. We heard figures on that earlier today. Normally between 60% of the interstate movements of cattle from the Territory come into Queensland, and that's the interstate travel, not export, around about 60%. So normally Queenslanders could rely on the Barkly and areas of the Territory as a resource or a supply of cattle for restocking. However, many of those cattle, due to the drought, have already found their way onto ships out of Darwin. It's certainly a reminder of the need to build resilience and build on the region's strengths and really try to the best of our ability to reduce the impacts of these economic shocks against the industry. It's not a new challenge, but it is one that we need to champion nonetheless. So the nation heard the calls of the bush well and truly, and on the 1st of March, so 2 weeks after the event, the Prime Minister announced the North Queensland Livestock Industry Recovery Agency, and as you've just heard, headed by the CEO Shane Stone. Despite its name, our remit covers the full impact of the event, which includes primary production, small business, communities, the environment, education and infrastructure, including road, rail and water. So we have a responsibility for strategic leadership and coordination of the Commonwealth support for the immediate and longer term recovery of the regions. We work with communities, councils and the Queensland State Government, enabling a more coordinated, targeted and a direct response. The agency was deliberately established with a 5-year life, and this is to take into account acknowledgement of how long it is going to take to rebuild and recover from this particular event. And some of our grant program timelines are coupled with that, taking that into consideration. So we hit the ground running, and 11 days from formation we had our first meeting, and we've since held meetings across the region, including Townsville, Winton, Mossman, Normanton, Cloncurry and Corumba. We've travelled tens of thousands of kilometres across the regions and hearing from people and fully understanding the issues. We've been actively involved in stakeholder and community engagement activities well and truly across the region. And this helps us, this informs board discussions, strategic conversations, and really helps us provide advice on the initial response as well as the longer term recovery efforts. Within a fortnight of the announcement, I joined Shane and the Chief Operating Officer, Nico Padovan, to a visit to Cloncurry, McKinley and Julia Creek. And Over a third of the time since the formation of the agency has been spent on the ground, engaging with individuals, businesses and communities. We've also worked alongside AgForce, QRider and RFCSNQ. Jason Strong, there you go, how's that for an acronym? Across a range of forums, dedicated information sessions and community events, such as the Cloncurry Show, the Richmond Field Days and the Curry Merry Muster, letting people know about the assistance available to them, but also hearing from people about what it is they need us to be doing. With the livestock sector, we've been working and engaging with RMAC, MLA, North Queensland and the Northern Territory Cattlemen, as well, of course, the state and Commonwealth departments that support the livestock sector. Notwithstanding the value of the cattle industry to the region, we're not just focused on livestock. To date, over $600,000 has been directly paid to individuals, businesses, communities, local governments and the state government. And as at the 18th of October, 1,735 primary producers have received special disaster recovery grants of up to $75,000 each, totalling $91 million. Beef and sugarcane producers represent the majority of the claims, but there have also been applications from fruit growers, sheep farmers, vegetable growers, grain growers, nurseries, fish trawlers and others. People have also started making use of the up to $400,000 dollar for dollar restocking, replanting and on-farm infrastructure grants. So far, 107 applications totalling over $32 million have been approved. Grants are also available for small businesses and not-for-profits. So 755 grants totalling over $10 million have been approved in that space. Over $118 million has been paid to individuals and households under the Commonwealth's disaster recovery payment. $120 million was paid to the Queensland Government under the disaster recovery funding arrangements for a range of initiatives, including helping small businesses to recover. They're the backbone of many communities, of course. Mental health and wellbeing services and future flood preparedness measures. $40 million for 2 new radars at Maxwelltown and Charters Towers, and they're supporting rain gauges. $4 million for non-government and boarding schools with a significant number of students from flood-affected areas. $2.6 million to support the mental health and communities affected by the floods. 11 local governments received $1 million each to help with removal of carcasses and reimbursement for fodder relief in the very early stages. LGAs have also received via the Queensland Government assistance in the tune of $14.5 million for water and sewerage restoration, $20 million for clean-up to restore damage to community and recreation facilities, and $2 million for fodder drops. So with assistance measures well and truly starting to hit the ground, we've now turned our minds to the future, and the government has set us a task of providing advice on a strategy for long-term recovery and strengthen resilience in the region. To inform that strategy, in August we held a series of roundtables across the northeast and the northwest, and 120 people attended across 6 locations and represented diverse stakeholder groups. Our guiding principle, locally led, locally developed and locally understood, has focused our consultations at our board meetings and has also provided a great opportunity for discussions with the Prime Minister, with Minister Littleproud, senior Queensland Government officials and others, leaders in the flood recovery space. We anticipate this advice being made available to government later this year. In addition to the strategy work, our CEO, 2 board members and agency executive embarked on an extensive, I've called it a catch-up, chat and cuppa tour. Probably could add another C word in there, maybe a coldie or something, but not talk about that. Throughout the region, from Townsville to Cairns, Georgetown, Corumba, Burketown, Adels Grove, Four Ways, Cloncurry, Julia Creek, Richmond, Hughenden and back to Townsville, with many kitchen table conversations had along the way. In a fortnight, the delegation drove a little over 4,500 kilometres, and people really generously welcomed us into their homes and gave us the thoughts on how the support to date has worked and what they think success looks like in the longer term. We know the work isn't over, and many people in the northwest tell us that the worst is yet to come. They're telling us the support to date has been invaluable in helping people get through the initial impact, the clean up and repair, and for those ready to restock and replant. And in the words of Shane Stone, we've provided people in need a hand up, not a hand out. We heard from people the ability to fully recover hinges on a decent wet season, the time taken for pastures to fully recover and the availability of good quality stock to rebuild herds. We heard they are on the lookout for their family members, their friends and their neighbours and those around us who might be going through a bit of a tough time. We also heard it will take time, but they will recover. There is no doubting the strength, resolve and resilience of the people we've met, and it made a lasting impression, and it's well and truly fortified our resolve to have a strategy that's valuable, practical and can be used by anyone living and working in the region. So we're now at the stage of refining and testing the strategy, and we welcome your input. So from all this consultation, a shared vision for North Queensland is beginning to emerge, and we are seeing some broad areas requiring effort and action to support long-term resilience. People want a profitable economy, a vibrant community where people feel like they belong, an attractive region that people want to live in and to visit, and an environment that is valued, well managed and in good, if not better condition for the next generation. At this stage we see 5 desired outcomes that support the collective vision for North Queensland: diversified economies, infrastructure, very important to connect regions and deliver economic objectives, prosperous and innovative enterprises, better understanding and managing risk, and connected and cohesive communities. Of course, the how we get there is the hardest part. We all know a key part of the long-term recovery and resilience will be a prosperous cattle industry. And some of the opportunities identified, which I don't think will come as a surprise to help us achieve that, is to support more productive business practices by building local producer capabilities in the three key areas of land, livestock and business management. So building capacity, improving weed and pest control, that's very topical in Queensland at the moment, and once again that's not a new issue. Shifting the perception of live exports and addressing broader changing customer perceptions of beef is very important. Investing in road, rail and water infrastructure and associated facilities to improve access to export markets. Developing innovative farm practices that utilise emerging technology and high-speed internet. Providing accurate weather forecasting and communications to enable proactive risk management and adequate business planning. So in conclusion, we will continue to test these ideas and others as we move forward with finalising our advice. And as I mentioned a moment ago, Don and David are also in the room, so we'd really like to test some of these ideas with you, and if there's anything you want to share with us, we're all ears. And thanks very much for the opportunity to update you today.